Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we can meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this craziness, today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the survival story of 13-year-old Thadius Phillips, who is the boy who survived 43 hours with the Bonebreaker killer. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you want. They're both Bratterstein, but no pressure. So today's video, guys, today's video, it's a good sentence, is sponsored. And I have a new sponsor that I'm so excited about this partnership, and I think you guys will be too, because guess who it is? It is Skillshare. Are you familiar with Skillshare? If you're not, you're about to get familiar with Skillshare. So Skillshare is an online learning community where lifelong learners can go to learn skills that will benefit them throughout their whole lifetime. And bro, if you did not know, but I am the type of person who is constantly trying to learn new skills, particularly where this channel is involved, because I don't know if you know this, maybe you do, but I do everything here by myself. I'm 100% a solo project, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, I'm a control freak, and two, I just like to be very hands-on with every single thing that goes into my channel. Like, I can't outsource anything. It's not who I am, because one, I don't trust anyone, and two, I want to be able to know how to do these things myself in case I ever need to do them. So when it goes to researching, creative writing, filming, editing, everything here I had to teach myself independently. So if you're anything like me, you're going to love Skillshare because it is an online learning community that offers thousands of classes across 150 countries, and there's so many different classes to choose from. Oh, trust me, I've been on there. And there's classes in yoga, which I want to start doing because my flexibility is whack. There's classes on parenting tools, which we all know I'm going to need like some tips and tricks in the very soon future. Okay. And the class that I'm most excited about at this particular moment is how to take like professional style photos on your iPhone for a couple of reasons. One, I'm about to have a baby, and I want to take as many like high quality professional looking photos of him as possible, because it's not like I'm ever going to take him out into the world, because I don't want anyone to look at him or breathe on him or chance him getting hurt. And two, because my Instagram game is hella weak, and I would like to up that production value just like a little bit, just like a little bit. So recently I started taking a new class with Skillshare, obviously, and it's called iPhone Photography, How to Take Pro Photos on Your iPhone. And this is taught by Dale McManus, and I've really been enjoying it. It teaches you how to take and edit professional style photos all from your iPhone. Like, everything would be internal in your phone. It teaches you how to change the settings to take better photos with your iPhone, which I didn't know was a thing. I'm not technologically advanced, I'm not gonna lie to you. So that has been very helpful to know that that's even an option. Also, it shows you how to use natural light, which is what I prefer. That's what I use for filming. I do have lights as well, but I always sit in front of an open window to take the best photos, and also how to create depth. And we all want depth. And I don't know, man, I'm just like really down with the Skillshare sickness. I've been really enjoying it. I'm excited to continue taking more classes. And I just feel like it's beneficial for my life because, one, there's so many different subjects, and I have like a lot of stuff I need to learn right now because I got a lot going on, as you guys know. I want to make this channel as good and as high quality production wise as it can be. I want to make sure to learn to be a good mother, and I want to be in better health. And Skillshare offers classes on all of those things, which I love. And the thing that's most important to me is that you can take the classes at your own pace. And like, my time, like free time, very limited already, and it's about to get a lot more limited. So that to me is why Skillshare is beneficial to my life, because I can learn the things that I want to learn during the time that I have available to learn them. So Skillshare is offering members of the Brat Pack the opportunity to explore all of the classes that Skillshare has to offer for 1 month for free if you click the link in my description box today. So if you're like me and you want to join a community of rad lifelong learners who want to learn new skills that can benefit them for a lifetime, please make sure to click the link in my description box today for your 1 month free trial. I just want to say a big thank you to Skillshare for wanting to partner with me. I think that that is super rad. And of course, I want to thank you guys for always being so supportive of every sponsor that I have, because you guys rock. Don't ever change. So now that I'm done spreading the good word of Skillshare, we can go ahead and get into this video. Now, this video is going to be on a case that I had never heard of before. Amazingly, because once you hear the details, you're going to be like, why is not everyone talking about this? Why isn't everyone talking about this? But this is a case that was suggested to me by 2 subscribers, a subscriber named Joanne and a subscriber named Heather. So thank you, Joanne and Heather, for your suggestion. And oh my gosh, after looking into it, I can see why you wanted me to look into it, because misery loves company. And this story is horrible, dude. It's so messed up. I am truly blown away that I had never heard about this case, because it's just horrifying. This poor kid, Thadius Phillips, getting abducted by the Bonebreaker killer. And the Bonebreaker killer, mind you, was a 17-year-old kid. That's right. This monster was a 17-year-old who had a lot going on upstairs. Must have. There's no way you could do what he did without. And he had, at the time that he kidnapped Thad, had already killed 1 child and had developed a very messed up torture method that he liked to implement prior to committing his murders. And I mean, he had already done this to 1 kid, and he had gotten away with it. And he probably would have continued to have gotten away with this murder if it hadn't had been for that meddling kid. And by that meddling kid, I mean that child that he kidnapped and tortured for 43 hours that just happened to escape and survive. You literally can't make this stuff up. It's insane. And today I'm going to tell you all about it. I've read a ton of articles. I've watched a ton of videos. I've listened to interviews. I listened to an interview with the Bonebreaker killer. And I did all that so you don't have to, right? So now you can just sit back and hear me tell you all about it. So with that said, come gather around and let me tell you the survival story of Thadius Phillips, the 13-year-old boy who spent 43 hours with the Bonebreaker killer. 43 hours of torture. That is what was inflicted on 13-year-old Thadius Phillips in Baraboo, Wisconsin, on July 29th, 1995, just after 1:30 a.m., after having a really nice night out with his whole family. It was his parents and his 3 siblings. They had gone out to dinner together. Thadius Phillips, who went by Thad, his family called him Thad, had been sleeping on the couch when he had fallen asleep on the couch with his little sister, when he woke up to something strange. And what do you think woke him up? He's all groggy, he's 13, he's barely waking up, and he wakes up to the sensation, the feeling of being carried. This is so crazy to me, because he's just sleeping on the couch, and he's sleeping next to his little sister, a smaller child, mind you, like a little girl, but still it's Thad who gets taken. And Thad, feels like he's being carried, but in his sleepy child brain, he thinks that it's his dad carrying him to bed, because typically if he'd fall asleep on the couch, his dad would scoop him up and take him to bed. So he just kind of falls back asleep in this person's arms, assuming that he's going to be safely tucked into bed, but he was very wrong. He was actually being carried out of his house by a 17-year-old kid named Joseph Clark, a kid who had already gotten away with murdering 1 other teenage boy a year prior. Joseph Clark was born in 1977 in Wisconsin, and was born to a mother who ended up giving him up for adoption, where he ended up being placed into a family that didn't have a ton of money, with parents who had a pretty serious drinking problem. He described his childhood as happy overall, not much to complain about despite these issues. He said that though his parents were functioning alcoholics, he was still cared for, and anything he wanted or needed that his family could afford, they would get for him. Joseph did, however, say that he was going to bars, to pubs, with his parents by the time he was 11 or 12, which I would like to know. Who is carding the door at this bar? Because I don't think that's allowed. But either way, he would go to the bar with his parents while they would get drunk, and he would hustle adults at pool for money. So he'd pretend he couldn't play, and then they'd try to play him, and then he'd like whip them and take their money. In school, Joseph Clark was said to have been a bit of a bully. There were different instances that they have on record of him bullying other kids, but he says that this was just taken out of context and blown into something that it wasn't, that he did have these altercations with these kids, but that it wasn't him bullying them, it was him and his friends messing around, you know, deflecting completely. But this is the same kid who, while he was in school, called one of his teachers and threatened to murder his teacher. But again, this was taken out of context and over-exaggerated as well, because what really happened is he was just prank calling his teacher and things got out of hand, and then he threatened to murder him. Totally normal behavior. So that's already like not great, right? Well, one more thing happened in Joseph Clark's background as a child that we generally see, not always, but it is common to be seen with future serial killers. And I'm going to give you some options so you can guess which one you think it was. A, sexual abuse as a child. B, the tendency to torture animals. Or C, a traumatic head injury. I'm going to give you a second here to type down your guess down below, A, B, or C. If you guessed C, a traumatic head injury, you are correct, because when Joseph Clark was 15 years old, he got into a bad accident while riding a dirt bike that left him with a broken collarbone, a brain bleed, and a subdermal hematoma. Apparently Joseph and a friend of his had been working together, and they like worked outside, and it started to rain, so they had gone home to just kind of hang out, and once the rain stopped, they're like, let's go on a dirt bike ride, the two of us, just the two of us, you and I. So his friend was driving the dirt bike, and he was hit sitting on the handlebars. They got into an accident that threw him pretty far, and obviously it was bad enough that he required hospitalization. It was like a whole thing, and from then on, he was not the same, and that was when he was 15, and by the next year, he was already acting on his desire to hurt people smaller and weaker than he was. And this was the person who was carrying 13-year-old Thad out of his house that night, and him and his family had no idea what he was in for. Oh my God, I can't even imagine how his parents were feeling when they found out that he wasn't there, and then how they felt when they found out what happened to him. It must have been so traumatizing, but I couldn't really find anything on his parents or what was happening during the time he was missing. All I found is that his father discovered that he wasn't in the house at 4 a.m. So he was taken at 1:30 at 4 a.m. He discovered that he wasn't there, and that they were completely confused because they looked around and it didn't look like anything had happened. There was no sign of a struggle, anything like that, because he carried him out asleep. But they were insistent that Thad would not have left on his own, so they didn't understand what had happened. The next time that Thad regained consciousness was when Joseph Clark set him like on the ground on the side of the road. And it's probably because this child was a lot heavier than he anticipated, and the walk of, like, he was carrying him down the street with, like, on foot. And he probably wasn't intending on this kid being as heavy as he was and this walk being as labor intensive as it was. So he sets him on the ground. And Thad wakes up and he's really out of it. It's like 1:30 in the morning. He's super groggy. He's a child. And in his groggy, sleepy state, he thinks that, well, one, he doesn't know where he is, right? He's only lived in this area. Him and his family had literally only moved in 2 weeks prior. Nightmares. Nightmare fuel. This is like the worst thing. I can't even imagine. But anyway. Charlie, did you take my brain cells again? I think so. I think you did. Anyways. Thad wakes up. He's super confused. And he, in his sleepy state, thinks that Joseph Clark is like a family friend. He doesn't say he recognizes him, but you know, when you're out of it, like, things don't make any sense. So he thinks it's a family friend. And he asks him, like, if they're having car trouble, because he must have been like half in and half out of sleep. Like, I can only imagine. And Joseph was like, actually, yes, it's exactly what's happening. We are having car trouble. My car is just over that hill that way. So you need to come with me and we need to go so we can fix this problem. Dad's like, cool, sounds great. Let's get on that. So the duo starts running down the road together towards this fictitious car. And with each step that Thad runs and each stretch of road that the two go down where they do not approach a car, 13-year-old Thad starts to realize that something is not quite right here. And as he and Joseph Clark get to their secondary location, I guess this would be the first location because he didn't really take him two places. Secondary locations are not good places. But anyway, Once he gets to Joseph Clark's house with Joseph Clark, and he sees the house that's in real bad shape, real broken down, the yard's covered in trash and debris, Thad realizes that he is in danger, and he is at the house of a stranger. At this point, he's freaking out, right? He's looking around the yard. He sees that it's covered in trash, and it's covered in trees. And I can only imagine that he's starting to freak out and that Joseph Clark is realizing that Thad's starting to freak out. So he does what he can to calm him down. And he's like, hey, don't worry, guy. You're here for a party. We're going to have a big party. There's no big deal. All your friends are going to be there. And he starts rattling off the names of teenage boys that lived in the area, teenage boys who went to school with Thad, and names of boys that he recognized. And upon hearing this, Thad's like, oh, well, clearly there is a party. Like, he couldn't pull these names out of nowhere, so this must be legit. There must not be something wrong. I'm overreacting. And then he enters the home with Joseph Clark, and he looks around, and he sees that the house is in just awful condition. There's trash everywhere. There's old food everywhere. Like, the whole place is a pigsty. Not exactly the type of place you would expect to have a party with a bunch of teenage boys. So once inside, the two boys were totally alone. Now, where was this boy's parents? Where were his siblings? I have no idea, but they were totally alone. And Joseph was like, you know what? Do you like model cars? Because I totally have some model cars upstairs in my room. And Thad, being 13, was like, oh, heck yeah, that sounds great. Let's go look at these model cars. So they climb the stairs to go to Joseph Clark's bedroom. Once in there, he does have model cars. So Thad sits, on the floor or whatever, and he starts playing with the model cars because he's a child. And Joseph Clark sits there and watches him and waits for the perfect moment to attack. And once Thad's guard's down, he's playing with the cars, he has his right moment, Joseph Clark grabs 13-year-old Thad and throws him on his bed and jumps on top of him. And before Thad can do anything to defend himself, to try to fight him off at all, Joseph Clark grabs Thad by the ankle and twists his foot around until he hears the bones inside snap. Yeah, I told you. His name is the Bonebreaker Killer. He breaks the bones of his victims. That's what he does. No. So once this was done, once Joseph had gotten off of Thad and was distracted, he was just sitting on the edge of his bed, like holding his head in his hands. Thad, apparently not feeling the pain of what just happened to him, more feeling the adrenaline of knowing he needs to get out, just go. He gets up and he tries to make a run for it. And oh my God, this is, he says that when he went to run, he could feel his broken bones like grinding against each other. And he could feel that when he tried to step, his leg, like his ankle bone, slid right past his foot bone because they were no longer connected. And that little bit of information ruined my life. But not as much as it ruined his life, I'm sure. So he goes and runs for it, and he makes it all the way down the flight of stairs before Joseph Clark catches up to him, grabs him from behind, and puts him in a chokehold and rips him towards the living room. He pulled him backwards, away from an exit, away from freedom, and he pulled him to his couch, where he got him on the couch and he got him positioned in such a way that he was able to get Thad's leg up on his knee, and he started to push upward so that his leg went above, like Thad's own leg went above his head, and he pushed until Thad's femur snapped. Okay, that's the thick thigh bone. The thigh bone snapped. Can you even imagine the type of pain that you would be in? How bad that would hurt. The sound, like all of it just messes me up. I've never broken a bone. And the thought of this destroys me. But Thad said that for whatever reason, he didn't feel any of the pain at first. When this was happening to him, it was just all adrenaline, and he didn't feel the pain of having his femur literally just snapped right there on the couch. He just said that he heard the pop of his bone breaking, and that was it, no pain. But this kid, knowing that he was trapped, how are you going to run on a broken ankle and a broken femur? You're not. So he knew, he had the presence of mind to know that he needed to start talking to his abductor, talking to his torturer, humanizing himself with him, and trying to make a connection to save his life. How he knew to do this at 13 years old, I have no idea, but he did. he started talking to Joseph. He started trying to get to know Joseph. It started trying to get Joseph to get to know him. He asked him, like, what's your name? And Joseph answered honestly. He didn't give him his full name, but he said, like, my name's Joe. And he went on to tell him about his life a little bit. Joseph told him, like, that he lived alone in this house with his brothers. That part wasn't actually true. His mother lived there, but she was away babysitting her grandchildren in, like, another area. He talked to Thad about his life, about his friends, about his girlfriend, about his car. Like, they just, like, bonded like friends, which is super weird. And he would do that throughout the hours of this ordeal. He would, like, be his friend and then torture him, be his friend and torture him. It was mind torture as well as what he was into. And then Thad decided to ask, like, a pretty basic question, something that was probably ever present on his mind. And he was like, why'd you break my leg, my guy? Like, why did you decide that that was what you wanted to do today? Why did you do this to me? And Joseph Clark responds with something that I'm sure just, like, chilled Thad from the inside out. And he said that he just liked and was fascinated by the sounds of bones snapping. Which is, like, one of the worst answers I imagine that you want to get when asking that question in his current position. So Thad then went on to ask Joe, like, okay, it's a weird thing to be into, but sure. Why don't you just try to break your own bones? And Joseph Clark, who had apparently previously tried this, was like, oh man, you know, I've tried, but I can never get the angles quite right. So then Thad goes on to be like, oh, okay, so have you ever done this before with, like, another person, like, or am I your first? And he then admitted that, no, Thad, you were not my first. I have already done this to 2 boys. I tortured and murdered 2 boys before you. And Thad was just like, of course you did. Like, I can only imagine how horrifying of an answer that was, to learn that there were 2 boys prior to you in the position you're in and that both of them are dead. And you're just laying there like, tight. Thad was then kept in Joseph's house as a prisoner for hours. By the end of it, it was 43 hours total. And all the while, Thad begged and pleaded for his release, but Joseph Clark was just not having it. Thad and he would go back and forth between being really friendly, like Joseph would act like his good friend. The two would go downstairs and watch TV together. And then he would snap and turn into a monster and start torturing him again. And Thad just did everything he could think of. He was like, I won't tell anybody, just let me go. I will say that I tripped and I fell over a table and snapped my own leg. Like, don't worry, I will never turn you in. And Joe Clark was just kind of like, no one would ever believe that, and wouldn't let him go. And at one point, poor Thad, had thought that he was going to get saved because, you know, during one of the moments where Joseph Clark was being nice to him, he was like, oh, you know, can I please call my parents? And Joe was like, absolutely, my guy, of course you can. We are bros. And he gave him a phone so that he could try to call his parents. And when Thad went to do so, he found that the phone wasn't even connected, like the phone line wasn't working. And he was like, great. And it turned out that this was just like a giant joke to Joseph Clark, and he was just tormenting him. In another one of these instances where Joseph was acting cool, acting like he was Thad's BFFFFFF, the two had been sitting downstairs in the living room watching TV together, and what I can only imagine would be incredibly awkward and tense silence. Joseph decided that he wanted to mess around with his prey a little bit more, so he scooped Thad up and walked back upstairs to his bedroom, where he put him down on the bed again. He then climbed on top of him and grabbed his other ankle, the one that wasn't broken yet. I believe this was his left ankle. And he started to twist. He twisted and he twisted until the bone broke. And then he twisted some more until Thad's foot was turned completely around. Thad said of this that he never screamed, he never cried. He probably screamed, but that he never cried, and he never let on to Joe how hurt or scared he was because he didn't want to give him the satisfaction. I watched an interview with Thad, and Thad described this act as Joe just twisting and twisting, and that he twisted his leg until his skin looked like a twisted rubber band and his feet were backwards. When Joseph would do these things, Thad would fight and he would scream. And Joseph would take a pillow and press it down on Thad's face, or make Thad hold it on his own face to muffle the sounds of his screaming. And he told Thad, like, if you don't stop screaming, I'm going to either snap your neck or break your back. And at this point, like, of course Thad believes that he's going to do this. Look what he's already done to him, you know what I mean? So he would do his best to try to keep himself from screaming, but he would also do his best to try to fight Joseph off. Like when Joseph would do this, he would be sitting on him, but facing away from him. So Thad would start punching Joseph like in the back and in the back of the head, but it didn't do anything to stop him or slow him down. It just pissed him off. So once this deed was done, the deed of twisting his other foot around like a rubber band, he took Thad's foot and he turned it back the right way. And he then proceeded to wrap both of Thad's broken ankles and his broken thigh bone with ace bandages to try to hold them straight, and then placed these like new white socks over his legs to try to conceal what he had done. After this, he proceeded to actually hook Thad up with a pair of leg braces. He had these on deck, like a pair of leg braces, and then would just leave Thad in his room, where he would periodically go downstairs, leave the house, go outside to try to work on his car. Periodically throughout the day, he would come back upstairs to torture Thad further. He would make him stand up and make him try to walk on these leg braces with his broken legs. And at one point, he like led him to the edge of the staircase and then just pushed him down the stairs, where he landed on his back. He would just go through these periods where he would just come up and continuously terrorize this child. Finally, the Saturday after Thad had been abducted, he had his first moment where he thought he was going to actually have a chance to escape. This was his first chance to do so. And as I said, he had been laying upstairs in Joseph's bedroom, and he would hear Joseph periodically go downstairs, go outside to try to work on his car and try to get his car to start. But thus far, it had been unsuccessful. His car just wasn't working until it was. And what happened was Thad is laying upstairs and he hears, Joe downstairs. He hears the front door open. He hears him go outside. He hears a car, like, ignition turning. He hears it start up, and then he hears the car drive away. And I can only imagine at this point what was going through Thad's head. I just can't imagine. Like, he must have been thinking, like, is this real? Is my mind playing tricks on me? Is Joseph playing a trick on me to see what I do? If I try to leave, am I going to be killed? Like, all of these thoughts must have been swirling through this young kid's head, but he gathered his nerve and he decided that he had to at least go for it. So he pulled himself out of Joseph's bed, and he then started to pull himself across the floor to get to the staircase. And he said that as he would do this, he would periodically lose consciousness due to the pain. And finally, he made it out of the room into the staircase, where he threw himself headfirst down the flight of stairs because there was no other way he was going to get down. And he did this fully prepared to accept whatever waited for him at the bottom. By the time Thad reached the bottom of the stairs, he had passed out again. And when he woke up, he found that Joseph had returned. And he had actually returned with a girlfriend who had been in the home while Thad lay there broken and bleeding just feet away from her, but she never saw him. In the time it took him to get himself downstairs and to pass out, Joe had returned, spent some time with his guest, and the guest had left. And now he was pissed to see Thad at the bottom of these stairs. Joseph scooped Thad up and took him back upstairs to his room, where he proceeded to punish him. And to punish him, he took off the leg braces, he took off the socks, he took off the bandages, and he proceeded to twist both of Thad's already broken ankles back and forth to cause him more pain. He then started to jump up and down on this boy's broken legs and on his chest while he just laid there having to accept this. This poor kid said that his legs at this point were just like completely destroyed, that his thigh was swollen to the size of a basketball and his ankles were swollen to the size of softballs. Once Joseph was satisfied that his punishment had been enough, he then went on to then tend to Thad's wounds again. He wrapped them up in ace bandages and placed these nice white socks back over his legs. And Thad has said that this felt ritualistic to him, that when Joseph would put these socks on his legs, he would place them on very carefully, and he'd make sure they were just right, lining up the seams perfectly so that they just looked pristine. And he said that Joseph had hundreds of pairs of these brand new white socks at his disposal, which does seem super weird. And he said that he had gotten to this point where he knew that Joseph putting these socks on his legs was a sign that the torture was done for a little while. That anytime he would take the time to wrap him up and put him in these socks, this was his way of knowing that Joseph was going to take a substantial break between now and the next time he would torture him. The following day was Thad's little brother's birthday, and Thad woke up in a stranger's home with legs that were broken and bruised. He said that they were yellow and they were swollen, and that they didn't even look like they belonged to a human being, and that the pain that he was feeling was completely indescribable. And that same day, in a moment of frustration, Joseph came upstairs and he proceeded to again jump up and down on this child's broken, bruised legs, jumping up and then slamming down as hard as he could repeatedly with his kneecaps. And he, in doing this, slammed down so hard on Thad's kneecap with his kneecap, that he broke Thad's kneecap and pushed it completely around the other side of his leg. Now, I don't even think I mentioned that Joseph Clark was like close to 6 feet tall and like 200 pounds. And Thad was 13 and weighed like 90 pounds. I don't think I mentioned that, but for reference, that's how big this guy is, he's smashing this kid to bits, dude. Like, it's so messed up. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I have no words. I've been left speechless. Thank you, Joanne and Heather, for the nightmares. So that night, again, Joseph wanted to leave the house, but this time he wanted to ensure that his victim would not try to escape again, because he had underestimated him last time. So he took Thad and he put Thad inside of a closet and locked him inside the closet, and then left the house so he could go and party with his girlfriend, because priorities. While in that closet again, Thad was like, you know, this is my time to shine. I got to do what I got to do. I got to see what I can do. So he looked around the closet and he saw an electric guitar, and he's like, sure, why not? This could work. So he picks up the guitar with whatever strength he had in his body, and he starts to beat repeatedly on the lock of the door until the lock broke and the door was able to be opened. And he was like, okay, let's do this, man. So he starts to pull himself across the floor, pulling himself from the closet to the staircase again, and periodically passing out from the pain. When he got to the edge of the stairs, he again threw himself down the stairs head first, because it's the only way he could, because he couldn't walk on his legs. And when he got to the bottom of the stairs, just like last time, he passed out. And was again hopeful that when he woke up this time, Joseph wouldn't be there to punish him for leaving the room. And when he woke up, he found that he was still alone. And I can't even imagine how that felt. Like the relief, but the relief combined with like panic and adrenaline, knowing that you gotta move, and you gotta move as fast as you can, because you don't know when this guy's coming back. Thad then looked to the kitchen, and on the kitchen wall, he saw a phone. Now, did this phone work? That was the question. He had already been duped before when trying to make a phone call, finding that the phone line just did not work. But he's like, you know what? I gotta try. So he pulls himself through the house to the kitchen, where he gets to the wall where the phone is. And luckily it's got like a cord that's hanging down. So he reaches up and he pulls it off the wall. He picks up the phone portion, because it's like a house phone. He puts it to his ear. And there's a dial tone, dude. There is a dial tone. Not only is there a dial tone, but the part of the phone that was down had the buttons on it. So he obviously and immediately called 911. Thad told the dispatcher who he was, what had happened to him, and the name of his captor's name. I mean, all he knew was that the guy's name was Joe. He didn't know his full name, but he told them what he did know. And they were able to trace the call. And once they did, they knew exactly where he was. And they told him, like, oh, listen, we know who this guy is. We are on our way. We have dealt with him before. He has a record even. Don't worry, we're going to get to you. We're going to save you. And they do, dude. The police get there in time to actually save Thad's life. I mean, they were able to save him, but when they arrived, he was laying on the ground and his legs were twisted all the way around so that both of his feet were pointed in the opposite direction. Like, it must have been a horrifying sight to see a kid that way. Once he got to the hospital, doctors realized just how bad his legs were, like what kind of shape they were in. And they were like, I don't know what we're going to do to save his mobility and make it so he could walk, but they did what they could, and he ended up requiring several surgeries over many years after the attack to repair his legs. But with these surgeries and some long-term medical care, Thad was able to walk and use his legs again, but he does still have a limp. Like, he wasn't able to go without that. He also ended up suing Joseph Clark in a civil suit, and he won, and the total payment was $21 million. The judge ordered Joe to pay him $31,566 in medical damages, $6 million in compensation damages, and $15 million in punitive damages. So anyway, back to the police finding Thad. They get to the house, they find Thad. He's unconscious, but he's alive. So he's rushed to the hospital to save his life. And when he got there, he found when he woke up that he was just hours away from death because of the internal bleeding that he had in his body. Like, if he hadn't gotten out when he did, he would have died. Like, Joseph Clark had really messed him up. And once he did wake up and police were actually able to speak with him, this is when Thad told the police that his attacker, Joseph Clark, had told him that he was not the only victim that he had done this to, that he had gotten away with murdering 2 other boys, and he even had the name of one of these 2 boys. It was the only name that he could remember, but he told police that Joseph Clark had admitted to murdering a kid named Chris Steiner. And this name was not unknown to police. 14-year-old Chris Steiner had gone missing from his home the previous year, the same month a year earlier on July 3rd, the day before the 4th of July weekend, when Joseph Clark was just 16 years old. Chris Steiner's mother had gone into her son's bedroom at about 6:15 a.m. to wake her son up for his morning shift at McDonald's. It was a new job that he had. And when she entered his room, she found that her young son's bed was empty and her boy was missing. Though he had been there when his father had went in his room to check on him the night before at 10 p.m. So the police were called, and when police entered the home, they felt that it was clear he had been kidnapped. There was a footprint in the earth outside one of the downstairs windows, and the window screen had been cut open. There were also muddy footsteps inside the house that led towards the back door, and the back door was left unlocked. They could literally see that someone had cut open the screen, entered through the window, went upstairs, picked up Chris Steiner, and had just walked out the door. His family tried to stay optimistic, obviously, and hoped that he would come back. But sadly, 6 days later, his body was discovered in the Wisconsin River by 2 jet skiers. His body was very badly decomposed due to its time in the water, so he had to be identified by his dental records. And when an autopsy was performed, they ruled his cause of death drowning, but his manner of death as undetermined. Chris's family, though, didn't actually think, they weren't suspecting that foul play was involved, because they hadn't heard anything, and they assumed that if he had been kidnapped, they would have heard something going on in the house that night. So what they assumed happened is that a couple of Chris's friends had actually broken into the house, convinced him to leave to go swimming because it was the 4th of July weekend, and that something had just gone horribly wrong, and that they were too afraid to admit it now that he had died. But now, fast forward to Thadius Phillips claiming that Joseph Clark had admitted to murdering Chris Steiner. Things were going to be looked at under a different lens. So with that, Chris Steiner's body was exhumed on August 3rd, 1995 to look for any evidence that this could be the case. They looked at Chris's body and performed x-rays, and they then took these x-rays that showed many bone breaks in his legs, mind you, and they compared them to the x-rays that had been taken of Thad after his attack and found several consistencies. And they were now considering Chris's death to be a homicide. Now, why didn't they notice these breaks in Chris Steiner's legs the first time around? I don't know. Maybe this was just a really small town, and it got, you see this happen from time to time. It's disappointing, but it happens. I know that there's a lot of bloating in the body, so the legs were bloated, so they didn't see anything outwardly that would look like the legs were broken. And I know that his legs weren't completely twisted around and backwards the way that Thad's were. So somehow this was just missed, and they didn't x-ray the legs because they didn't think there were any breaks. In addition to that, police noted that the proximity of these boys to Joseph Clark could make them easy targets. Both Thad and Chris Steiner lived pretty close to Joseph Clark, and they would have been easy for him to see. It would have been easy for Joseph Clark to see these boys walking around on a daily basis because they lived close enough by that he could have just seen them and been watching them. Anyways, obviously police want to arrest Joseph Clark now. So they go back to his house to try to arrest him, hoping that maybe he's back there at this point, but he's not. So they search the home instead. They're able to do this now. They got their warrants and everything. So they start to search the home. And while searching the home, they find some evidence that indicates to them that Thad and Chris Steiner are probably not the only intended victims for Joseph Clark, because they find a notebook. And inside this notebook, there are the names of several teenage boys written down. And he has these boys written in lists. 3 different lists, 3 different categories. And the lists were as follows. 1, get to now. 2, can wait. And 3, and the most chilling, just said, leg thing. Oh my God, bro, sir, what? No, oh my, no. Joseph Clark was arrested that same night after he attended a party with his girlfriend. They had trouble finding him at first, and they searched a bunch of like different parties, because apparently there were a lot of parties in this area at the time, but they were unable to find him. And how they ended up finding him is that the police did a stakeout at his home, knowing that he would eventually show up. And after 4 hours after Thad had placed his 911 call, Joseph Clark did return home, and the police swarmed him and arrested him. When police arrested Joseph Clark, his first words to them were, "Oh, he's alive?" And Thad 100% believes that Joseph Clark intended for him to die in that closet that night, that he was expecting to come back to a dead body waiting for him. And Thad says that the reason that he survived, the reason he thinks he survived, is because he just had the willpower. He didn't want to leave his family, and he didn't think his family would want to go on living without him. So he stayed strong, and he fought, and he lived. Joseph Clark's trial began on September 16th, 1996, and this was the trial for his assault on Thadius Phillips. And he ended up pleading no contest by reason of mental defect. And the defense argued that his biological mother had been a heavy drug user throughout her pregnancy with him. And they also discussed the fact that he had had that bad head wound when he was a youngster as contributing factors to why he had a mental defect. Thad was brave as hell though, dude, and he actually testified against Joseph Clark at his trial. He told all about the torture, all about the various different ways he would go about hurting him. He told the court that on several occasions after Joseph Clark would injure him, he would then pleasure himself in front of Thad, seemingly pleasuring himself to the cries of pain this little boy was experiencing, which is a whole nother thing. It's a whole other layer to what we've discussed. And it's gross, okay? Joseph testified that he didn't remember the attack, that he had frequent blackouts, and that that's what had happened when Thad's legs got broken, that he had gone into a blackout, and when he woke up, he found Thad on his bed crying in pain because of pain in his legs. He did say, though, that despite not remembering anything because he was blacked out, he did remember that he never intended to kill Thad. Like, that was never on the table. It wasn't that he blacked out and forgot about it. It's that was never on the table. He was never going to kill him. It was just a big misunderstanding. Like everything in his life. And dude, something so weird that I found when looking into this case. Why am I not looking at you? I'm like thinking because it's so weird. Is that somebody else, okay, between the time that Thad escaped, you know, Joseph's arrested, and the trial taking place, somebody else tried to kill Thadius Phillips, dude. Like, you can't make this up. This poor kid has been through, well, he's not a kid now, he's like a man, but he went through so much. Like, I guess a 15-year-old kid named Michael shot Thad. I saw it reported that he shot him in the arm. I also saw it reported that he shot him in the back. Now, I could not find anything on if this shooting was related to the trial, if this person knew Joseph Clark, if he was trying to like kill him so he couldn't testify against him, how he was related. I couldn't find anything of that. What I could find was that this did delay Joseph Clark's trial because Thad was supposed to testify, but it did end up happening eventually, and he did testify against him. And I just thought, I wish I could have found more on this, but I thought I had to mention it because it's absolutely crazy. If this had nothing to do with it, like, I don't understand why everyone's trying to kill this kid. I suspect that it did have something to do with it, but I have nothing to show for it. If anyone knows anything about this, please tell me, because I couldn't find anything on it except for that it happened and it delayed the trial. And I need to know. Need to. But anyways, in the end, Joseph Clark ended up being sentenced to 100 years in prison for attempted first-degree murder of Thadius Phillips. The following year, on November 3rd, 1997, Joseph Clark, who was now deemed the Bonebreaker killer, went on trial again, but this was for the murder of Chris Steiner. The prosecution took photos, the x-rays of Chris Steiner's leg breaks, and the x-rays of Thadius Phillips' leg breaks, and they put them up for, the judge and the jury so that they could show that clearly both injuries were caused by the same monster. But of course, Joseph denied this. He said that he didn't even know Chris Steiner. He said he had seen him from time to time in the neighborhood and at school, but that they didn't know each other and that they had never spoke. But again, Thad testified at this trial and was like, I'm going to contradict everything you're saying because you told me that you very well did know him and that you murdered him, sir, so you clearly knew him pretty intimately. His mom, Joseph Clark's mom, did testify on his behalf, giving him an alibi, saying that the night that Chris Steiner was kidnapped, Joseph was at home and never left. But they didn't really see this as credible, and there was proof that he often snuck out of the house and did so without being detected, so they didn't think that that was a very strong alibi. In the end, for Chris Steiner's murder, Joseph Clark was found guilty, and he was given a life sentence, again without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 50 years. I do know that he later tried to appeal or get his conviction overturned, but this was denied. So as far as I can tell, he is in jail. He will be in jail for the rest of his life. And truly, I'm kind of here for that, because this guy to me seems incredibly dangerous and very scary. The fact that he could already do something this horrible at such a young age, and the fact that at only 16 years old, he already had such a specific torture method, and that by 17, he had already successfully gotten away with murdering one child. It's very, I'm not into it. And if Thad had not escaped, if Thad had not gotten away, he may have gotten away with it again, and he may have gone on, I think he would have gone on to continue to do this over and over. Just because he was very, it feels like he was very ritualistic about it, from the specific ways he broke the bones, to him, tending to the legs, putting them in braces, putting them in those white socks and having it be so pristine and perfect. And the fact that he had all those pairs of white socks. And then the fact that he would, masturbate in front of him after hurting him. There was clearly something wrong with this kid. And to this day, he still takes no responsibility for what he did. He says that, again, this is one of those things that is taken out of context and a big misunderstanding. You just don't understand what happens. He says, first off, that he didn't kidnap Thad, that it was never proven that he had forcibly removed him from his home. And the reason that that wasn't proven is because it didn't happen. And that Thad had instead come with him by choice in the middle of the night. And he says that he didn't just violently attack Thad out of nowhere, that the two had been arguing at his house, and that from there he blacked out, and during his blackout he had broken Thad's legs, but that it started as an argument that turned into a fight, which makes him seem less evil, you know what I mean, for what he did. Oh, bro, it'll just piss you off to hear this. He also said that though Thad was completely beaten, he was real messed up, that there's no way to prove that Joe is the one who caused all these injuries, because, Thad did throw himself down the stairs several times trying to escape being captured. So some of those injuries were probably caused by him himself from throwing himself down the stairs. Okay. He also went on to say that there was nothing ritualistic about what was happening, and that he didn't even own a bunch of white socks. He does not know where Thad got that information. That he just had socks like a normal kid would have socks, and that he wasn't trying to do anything weird and ritualistic by wrapping him up. He was just trying to cover him, and he thought that maybe this would help his legs stop hurting since he was in so much pain. It would hold them together. But he didn't try to get him any medical attention. So What else? What else? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. He said that he never masturbated in front of Thad. That was just a plain lie. He doesn't know why Thad made that up. That just came out of his brain out of nowhere. That it wasn't possible that he did this during a blackout. Like, that wasn't it. That's just flat out never happened. He never did this depraved act. Like, that's just a bold-faced lie. He also says that he never told Thad that he had done this to 2 boys prior to him, and that he definitely didn't mention Chris Steiner's name because he didn't know him and doesn't know where Thad pulled that out. Well, I guess he thinks Thad pulled it out of his butt. But what he actually said is he thinks that the DA put these thoughts in Thad's head. Because even though this case had already been done and he was already buried and the case was closed, the DA still thought that somebody had killed him, so they were trying to like frame him and using Thad's attempted murder to do that. Oh, and that notebook. The notebook found in Joseph Clark's room, the one with the different lists of boys' names, one of them literally just saying leg thing, right? That wasn't his, guys. Like, don't get it twisted. That was a notebook that belonged to a friend of his who had just left it at his house. It wasn't even his, so nothing to look at here. Now, do you believe any of that? Because I definitely don't. I think this was just a messed up kid with some really dark fantasies who went on to do hellish things and would have continued to go on to do hellish things if he had not been caught. And now as an adult, he's just lying about it. That's what I think. Man, I would just love to know. I'm just so interested to know what could damage a kid so badly because he was so young. Like, clearly there's something there. The head injury may be combined with some sort of nurture components. I mean, the house was pretty messed up, like the conditions he was living in. I can't imagine what his childhood was actually like. But regardless of that, I'm just curious, and I'm mostly, more than curious, I'm just happy that he is behind bars and that he can't hurt any more kids the way he hurt Thad and Chris Steiner. And maybe another kid, since Thad said that there were two kids that he mentioned. There could be somebody else out there that we don't even know about, and that's incredibly sad and scary, and it's just messed up. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope you found it interesting and informative, and it gave you all the information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I want to thank you for remembering Thad Phillips and Chris Steiner with me today, because their case is very horrifying and worth remembering and discussing. What happened to these 2 boys is honestly horrifying and unthinkable. I can't imagine what they went through, and I cannot imagine what these kids' parents felt like. Chris's parents, missing their baby forever and having to know what their child likely went through because Thad lived to tell the tale. So they know exactly what Thad went through. So they have this idea of what their child's final moments were like, and they were the stuff of nightmares. And Thad's parents having to deal with knowing that this happened to their kid and having to navigate all the psychological trauma that would be involved after something like this happens, and then Thad himself having to live with that trauma as well. It's just like all around super messed up. That's an understatement, but it's the statement I'm going with. But anyways, guys, please let me know down below of any cases you would like to see me cover in the future. As you know, I have a long list of cases. And if you leave me a suggestion, I'm going to put your name next to it to give you a shout out because you're great. And I love getting your suggestions because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste. Otherwise, you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below for you, along with a link to my merch store and a list of any products I used if I had put makeup on, which I didn't this time. A lot of the videos coming out in, what month are you guys going to be watching this? Like either April? I think you're going to watch this in April. I'm pre-filming a lot so that you guys don't miss any videos once I have my child, because I want to take a little time off with him, and I'm also probably going to need time to recover. And I'm almost done. At the time I'm filming this is not at all related to the video, but I just thought I'd let you guys know an update while you're watching this. When you're watching this, he might actually be here because he's due in April, but I've developed carpal tunnel. I may have high blood pressure. I'm very, very pregnant, and trying to multitask doing makeup and filming at the same time, it's just too much now. So we are where we are. At least I can still sit and film. But a lot of the videos are going to be just me telling you the story. And then once I'm able, probably go back to Morbid makeup because I love that so much. But again, everything's listed down below for you was my point. everything that is pertinent to this video. So merch store, social media, also the link to Skillshare, because I want to say one more thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So if you guys wanted to sign up for Skillshare, just don't forget to click the link down in my description box. And I love you so much for everything. You're all so great. Every single one of you. It's awesome. I don't know, man. I'm so out of it. I'm so tired. With all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday. At the very least, let's be better than Joseph Clark. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.